This chapter is all about working with Pixel Chooser and Mocha masking and tracking inside of BorisFX Continuum. We're going to start off exploring Pixel Chooser and how we can use that to limit effects to certain regions of our image, whether that be a shape or using certain color information. We'll then take the same method and then apply it while using Mocha, which is built into the majority of Continuum effects. We can use it for masking tasks and tracking masks across the screen. We can also use on certain effects Mocha's position data to have a lens flare tracked to our scene. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm here in my chapter 6A sequence, which contains 3 shots that we're going to be working with. And let's go over the first shot. If we look to our effect palette, we're going to hop inside the BCC Art Looks category. And the first effect that we're going to apply to this happens to be halftone. So find BCC halftone, drag it onto that first clip, and let's hop into effect mode. Here, we're going to change a bit of the way that this is integrated into the scene. We'll change the color scheme to RGB so that we contain color in the image. And then let's start to play with the shape that's being overlaid over top with this halftone effect. I'll make it round. And if we take a look, we can start to play with the halftone scale. So we're going to make this a bit bigger, as well as play with the aspect ratio of each of these round shapes. Now, with Pixel Chooser, the magic is that I could treat this as a vignette or even have this slowly fade off screen using a gradient. To access Pixel Chooser, we're going to scroll down a little bit with this effect, and we'll see some controls for Pixel Chooser Mocha. This is your gateway to limiting the effect. Let's turn Pixel Chooser on first. And one thing I like to do before I begin starting to work on this effect is viewing the matte mask. Right now, we're going to be presented with just an entire white color, which means that we can see the effect everywhere across our image. We'll see 2 categories in this effect for Pixel Chooser, one where we can mask it to a shape, or we can matte it using color information. Let's twirl down the mask section, which also contains shape options for gradients. And let's choose, in this case, a linear shape gradient, where we see a difference in the way this black and white matte looks. Here is where we're going to be seeing the actual halftone effect, where it gradually goes to gray, meaning we'll see a bit of it, but then fades to black here. And if I view the matte mask now, that's exactly what we see across the image. A slow change here from fully seeing the halftone to not seeing it at all. This could be great in the instance that we want to place a title over this image and use an effect as a way to have that title be popped in the image. We could also use it for a ton of other treatments. To continue working on this, I'm going to view the matte mask yet again. And we have some controls for where the gradient starts. So the X point in this case can go a long way so that we see more of that halftone. And then there's a gradient distance, which could also play with how we fade from fully seeing the halftone to not seeing it at all. So by playing with this, as well as the gradient X point, we can determine how our halftone is going to look. Another great thing about Pixel Chooser is your ability to also animate it so that we have some unique fade-ins of our effects. In order to see it in this instance, inside my record monitor, I'm going to go to the beginning of this clip, and we're going to add a few keyframes. So I'm going to make some more room here in my effect editor to see my graphs over here. And I want to add a keyframe right at the beginning of this shot for my X point. And I'll add also a keyframe to the gradient distance. I'm going to move my playhead forward until I arrive at the 3-second mark. And here, I'll add another keyframe to my X point value. And just viewing the matte mask again, so we can sort of see the changes to our gradient, start to adjust that X point, where you can see that we can use that to overall wipe the halftone off. Gradient distance, or playing with this as well, could also help to make a unique combination of 2 effects keyframed with how it changes from black to white. So I'll go to my first keyframe here, and we'll see that gradual change by manipulating those two values. If you need to move these keyframes at any time, keep in mind some useful shortcuts here. I have this one keyframe selected by itself, and I'm using the Option Alt key to move that keyframe right here in the record monitor to adjust the way that this comes in. And let's just turn off the viewing the matte mask and seeing the effect Pixel Chooser has now had on animating our halftone out. This could also be used for more simple tasks. A lot of time in certain treatments, if I head over to my stylized category, we'll find an effect called BCC Grunge, which allows us to have different grunge-based patterns over our entire image. And inside effect mode, there's a drop-down menu for all the different types of textures we can use. I'm going to end up choosing this paint splatter, and you can actually combine your grunge texture with other effects, and of course, use Pixel Chooser. So in this case, I'll turn Pixel Chooser on, and instead, from the Pixel Chooser mask section that we chose the gradient in the last example, I'm going to make it a circle element. And once that's selected, we can play with the master scale of the circle and also the feather. And most importantly, invert that. In this instance, by having a large feather and having it inverted, the texture only appears on the outside of the frame. Once you reach the maximum value for a scale shape, keep in mind that it might not be suitable for the example that you're looking for. So we could try something else like oval, which allows for more of a vignetted pattern of this texture. I'm going to mix this back in with the mix with original value. We have a subtle texture acting as a frame over our food. And we could easily make that just a bit more subtle by increasing the master scale so it's just at the edges, and even animate this out completely. Last but not least, I wanted to take a look at one other accessible point with Pixel Chooser, which is to limit it to a color region, which we've done in various exercises, but let's see this fully in action. I'm going to head over here to the last clip here in the timeline, and let's head to the color in tone category. There's a very popular BCC Plus effect called selective saturation, which I'll apply to this clip. And once we head into effect mode, you'll notice the ability to add saturation to a specific region of your image. So the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. I'm going to increase the saturation in both the shadows and the highlights, and you could play around with the position or range of what gets affected. But in this instance, we really just want to affect the blue, which has a lot of ranges. So we'll also have this selective saturation work with Pixel Chooser. So twirl down the Mocha mask and track section if you don't see it, and let's turn Pixel Chooser on. So we're going to start off with mask. So we'll view the matte mask, and to see what channel we're going to be working with, we're going to create a key. So I'm going to pull a channel key, and this key is based on two key colors located close to the bottom of the matte section. In order to select a key color, at the top of the selective saturation effect, we're going to just bypass it. And then I'm going to click to select the eyedropper and then click in the record monitor where I find the blue color that I want. I'll repeat that with the B color. Now that that's selected, I'll turn off the bypass so we can see what our key colors are. And we can start to play around with the values below the key colors to now focus on saturation and hue softness, not to mention luma softness, so that we can perfect this mask. And here, by these subtle changes, you'll see that when I turn off the view matte mask, then now that saturation is limited to her shirt. And if I go to the top of the effect to bypass it, we can see the before and after of our results. And that's how we can use Pixel Chooser. We're going to continue our exploration of it, but connecting Mocha and how that can be used for limiting effects as well.